A science story, huh?
These NYU scientists,
I felt
right.
But I was so
And I just thought, well,
I had figured it out.
It was that golden moment.
Because science was on my side.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Story Collider, where true personal stories about science help us to discover how weird and wonderful it is to exist in this world and be a human. I'm your host, Misha Gajewski, and today our stories are both from our recent Proton Prom. For the uninitiated, Proton Prom is our annual fundraiser we hold in celebration of science storytelling. We know not everyone could come in person or watch the live stream, so we just had to run two of our favorite stories from the night. Although, if we're honest, they're all our favorites, but we only have space for two in this episode. Anyway, our first storyteller is Pamela Toh. Pamela is an aspiring writer and graduate student at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. She actually first told this story at a show back in March that we did in partnership with the Friedman Brain Institute for Brain Awareness Week, and we loved it so much we had to have Pamela tell it again for Proton Prom. Her story is so inspiring and shows us that it's never too late to learn or start over. Trust me, you're gonna love this story. Here's Pamela.
So my parents are adorable. They went to kindergarten together. They've been best friends for almost 50 years. And they used to keep a collaborative journal where they would write down things that us kids would say. One entry from when I was 4 read, "Pamela's been asking me some interesting questions lately. How long do we have to wait until today? Can we ever stop counting? Do we feel wind because the earth is spinning?" I think that last one's pretty good for a 4-year-old. In another entry, my dad wrote, "I don't know why, but Pamela's favorite phrase is 'I don't like you.'" Because you see, my parents were great, but I was a little shit. I had such an awful attitude. You couldn't tell me nothing. I never did what I was told, definitely not homework. And that became an issue when I started going to school. Now, I went to kind of a mean school, and I think when I say that, people think the students were mean. But no, the teachers were the mean ones. When I was 10, I had one teacher who was particularly mean. And as usual, I didn't do my homework. And as usual, I said I just left it at home. 10-year-old logic, what are you gonna do? So me and a few other students were made to stand at our desks for the duration of class. But not before this teacher went around to each and every one of us and searched our bags to see if we were lying about not bringing our homework. I remember watching silently as this man, tall and lanky, with hair like a pit of spikes, as he stalked through these statue-frozen children in uniforms like he was some kind of prison warden. There was only the whir of the fans and the sound of his interrogation as to how and why we came to be such failures. He stopped at the desk of a student that was frequently punished alongside, and this grown man picked up this child's backpack, flipped it over, and shook the contents out onto the floor. He reached down and picked up this crumpled sheet of paper and waved the blank homework in front of the child's face, taunting him. He usually screamed at us, but this time, his voice dripping with a sinister calm, he just asked, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And this boy, his voice barely a whisper, like this was something he never told anyone before. He said, "I want to be a scientist." And this young man, who had barely started growing up himself, threw his head back and laughed in this boy's face and said, "You have to be smart to be a scientist," as he let that crumpled sheet of paper fall to the floor. Now, watching this as a 10-year-old, it never occurred to me that anything he was saying might be untrue. Your teachers teach you. That means they're telling you the truth. That scientists are capital S smart and that there's something capital W wrong with you. And when you're made to be the failure, you have two choices. One, you allow yourself to be reformed by the cruelty of individuals you do not respect. Or two, you lean into it. And I leaned into it. I was that one kid giving people piercings in the bathroom with a safety pin. I had a couple of teachers who would make you stand in the hallway if you didn't do the work, and I would just walk out when they got there. Like, I have nothing for you and you have nothing for me. And I remember every day when I would get home from school, my mom would ask me, "What did you learn today?" And every day, the answer was always nothing. Nobody was safe to ask questions to anymore. And I held on to that mentality, that shield, all throughout primary and secondary school, all throughout graduating at the bottom of my class, and all through not being able to get into any schools. And my parents, my kind, generous, patient parents, they saw all the garbage that I had to offer, and they said, "Let's try again somewhere else." My dad leveraged his job to get his company to move us from Singapore out to Dubai, because geographical cures are still cures. But my attitudes towards teachers in school hadn't changed, so it was all the same to me. Now, I spent an entire year doing absolutely nothing before moving. So I was 17 by the time I started high school. And by then, half my head was shaved, half my arm was covered in tattoos. And in my hoity-toity private school, I was the only one like me. And old habits die hard, so I promptly failed my first chemistry exam. I probably got about a 10% on it because exams were my favorite time to nap, so most of it was blank. And my chemistry teacher asked me to come to her office after class. And I remember thinking, here we go again. Another lecture by another teacher on what a waste of space I am. I dragged my feet to her office, and it felt like someone had poured concrete into my chest. This was supposed to be my second chance. But here I was again. Another failure, another disappointment. I felt that concrete rise to my throat as I sank deeper into that office chair, frozen, just like that day when I was 10. I stared down at my exam paper and anticipated and waited for the lashing, thinking, I've been in this position most of my life. There is nothing you could say that I haven't heard before. And she said, "How can I teach you better? Because I know you can do better than this." She said something I hadn't heard before. And the resonance of her question shattered me. Her words echoed through the abyss inside my chest and shook my entire being. Me? You're asking me, what do I know? I'm just a kid. I don't know anything. You can look at this exam and see that I don't know anything. You can ask anyone who has ever tried to teach me and they will tell you the truth that I am hopeless. How do you know that I can do better than this? When all I've shown you is wreckage, how can you still see the remains of a ship? The dam in my chest cracked open, and I bawled in her office that day. After that, she kept asking me questions. More questions that disarmed me, more things I hadn't heard before. Why is the sky blue? What is light? What is fire? Why can't we untoast toast? I saw her questions and returned the same, and soon I began engaging with what I was being taught. Now, I still had zero work ethic, but she taught me how to ask questions, how to use them like tethers to hold on to the world around and within me, how to hold on until I found an answer. That chemistry teacher was the first research scientist I'd ever interacted with. She got her PhD in biochemistry before going into education, and she was the one who got me started on the journey of becoming a scientist myself. Because I'll let you in on a little secret. Science isn't about being capital S smart. It's about being curious enough to ask questions and persistent enough to look for their answers. And that's why now, at the end of the day, when I leave the lab and I call my mom, I can't wait to tell her all the things I've learned.
That was Pamela. To learn more about her, visit our website, storyclatter.org. Being a storyteller on our stage is just one way to make Story Collider happen, but if standing alone, in the spotlight, in front of an audience, doesn't speak to you, maybe becoming a Story Collider donor might be more your speed. Story Collider donors play a vital role in our ability to bring you this podcast. We're in this together. Story Collider is one big experiment that's designed to connect us around our love of discovery, curiosity, and the natural world. If you believe in the power these stories have and this mission, please donate to the Story Collider at storycollider.org/donate. The most popular level is $10 a month, and you can make your tax-deductible donation at storycollider.org/donate. But really, any level makes a difference, and we're so grateful to everyone who supports Story Collider. What's the best way to learn a new language? Immersion. But sometimes that's not in the cards. But you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babbel. Now, I might only be 1 week into learning German with Babbel, but I'm so excited to start being able to speak German with my mom. With Babbel, you can learn everything you need to have real-world conversations, and all it takes is just 10 minutes a day. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college, which is bonkers. But Babbel is conversation-based learning with science-backed cognitive tools like spaced repetition and interactive lessons created by real language teachers and voiced by real native speakers. So here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/story. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/story. Spelled BABBEL.com/story. Rules and restrictions may apply. Our next story is from the wonderful Matthew Dix. Matthew is a best-selling author, elementary school teacher, and a record 60-time Moss Story Slam winner. His story was recorded at Proton Prom, which we hosted at our go-to New York spot, Caveat. And like all of Matt's stories, it's brilliant. It's funny, endearing, sweet, and beautiful all at once. Also, very relatable if you've ever looked at a family member and asked yourself, why are you like this? I can't wait for you to hear this story. You're going to love it. Here's Matt.
It's a little after midnight. I'm standing at the baggage carousel at the airport, wondering who the hell decided to call this a carousel. Carousel has painted horses and smiling children and calliope music, and this is just a conveyor belt dragging around bags of dirty laundry around and around and around. Even the bags are not having fun. And I realized why Dante stopped at the 9th circle of hell, because he has not visited this location, Bradley International Airport in Windsor Locks, Connecticut, on a Tuesday night after midnight. It is an awful place. But the problem really isn't that it's an awful place. The problem is that my bags are not on the carousel, because no person has ever in the history of the universe had their bag come off first on the carousel. I'm convinced that there are airport staff that have decoy bags. They just sort of toss them out onto the carousel to keep us from getting so enraged that we want to kill them. So we're just watching fake bags go round and round while we wait for our real bags to come around. But even this isn't the problem. The problem is where I was 12 hours ago. I was standing on Main Street, USA, Disneyland, like the most glorious and magical place there ever was. Colors and lights and music. It was fantastic. When I decided to bring my family to Disney World, my friends told me that I was crazy to go in August. They said it would be hot, the crowds would be ridiculous, and it would be expensive. And they weren't wrong. It was 100 degrees every single day of the vacation. And it was 2-hour lines for 2-minute rides. And sometime tomorrow, I'm going to have to sit my wife down and explain that after this trip, only one of our 2 children can go to college now, and she will be choosing which one that is. But what my friends didn't tell me was that Disney is actually a real magical place. That when you bring your kids there and they see Cinderella's castle for the first time, or they ride the It's a Small World and listen to that song, or they shake Mickey's hand and you see their faces, it is worth every penny. And it convinces me that all of my friends are soulless assholes. Even this is not really the problem. The problem is I'm in this anti-magical location, which is the baggage carousel, and I'm only here because of the 3 people I chose to bring to Disney, my family. 3 people who I love all the time but don't like a whole lot of the time. And right now, I really don't like them because I'm at the baggage carousel. I do not pack a bag. I take a small bag that I bring onto a plane and I put it in the overhead compartment. And when I get off the plane, I walk by all the losers who are stupid enough to pack a bag and put it into the baggage carousel. But now I'm with the losers. They are like my people. I chose these losers and they're dragging me down and it's killing me. My family empties their closets into bags, like enormous bags. My son brought 9 bathing suits for 7 days of vacation. I have 1 bathing suit all together in my entire life. None of this makes sense to me. They are like anchors dragging me down and killing me. As an author, I am often asked, who is the hero in my life? And I know they're looking for the literary hero, but my answer is always me. I am the fucking hero of my life. The fact I get anything done with these 3 human beings attached to me is a goddamn miracle. I cannot believe what I managed to accomplish. So I'm standing here with these people that I cannot stand, waiting for this baggage carousel to finish going round and round, when my daughter Clara steps up to me. And she says to me, "Hey, Dad, can I go talk to that girl over there?" And it's making me crazy because none of my family are normal in any way whatsoever. My wife can't tell the difference between an hour and a minute, so we're late at all times. My son has no sense of urgency at all. He has found a way to pee slowly. Like water leaves his body slower than any human being, and he loves every single minute of it. But my daughter is the worst. She is miserable beyond compare. She talks to everyone. Like my wife talks to everyone, but she talks to everyone. At Disney, every single mother with an infant, she's on that woman. What's the baby's name? How old is the baby? Cesarean or natural? How did it go for you? All of these questions come out of my daughter's mouth on a routine basis. She's taking pictures with the princesses, Ariel and Belle on one side. You take the picture, you shuffle the hell out of the way for the next kid. My daughter turns to Ariel and says, "So how is your day going? Is there something I can do to make it better?" She makes me crazy. And when she's not talking to people, she has a book in her hand all the time. And her books are like 4 inches thick. It's a brick. She brings a brick into Disney. And while there's a million things to look at, if she's not talking to a mother with a baby or riding a ride, she's reading a book she's already read 4 times before. And now she's reading it for the 5th time in the middle of Disneyland. And it's making me crazy. And now she's standing next to me and saying, "Hey, Dad, can I go talk to that girl leaning up against the pillar?" And I look, she's like 9 years old. She's about Clara's age. And I think, no, leave the girl alone. She's suffering like the rest of us. She's apathetic. She's upset. She's distressed. Just let people suffer in silence for once. Stop talking. But I can't do it because it's been 7 days of this and I've just given up. I'm like, fine, go talk to the girl. But as she walks away, I think to myself, why is my daughter always the weird one? And so eventually the bags come. They're enormous. They're like shipping containers. They come around. There's like 19 of them. They're all of every item of clothing my family owns comes out of the baggage carousel. I have to get a cart. Even though everything is on wheels, there's more bags than there are humans. So I have to get like that trolley and pile it up. And eventually I get it all together and I extract my daughter from that poor soul. And I get my son. He's in the corner licking something. I get my wife. We're all moving towards the exit finally when this guy stands in front of me. He steps in front of me and I think, who the hell is this? And then he leans into me like, oh, this is going to be something. And then he gets even closer and I'm like, I am ready to go. And he says to me, "That was my daughter that your daughter was talking to." And I think, oh God, what have you said, Clara? Please don't let it be a cesarean section. And he leans in closer and he says to me, "I am so impressed by what your daughter just did." He said, "My daughter is so shy, she could never speak to a stranger in her life." He said, "But your daughter went over there and just introduced herself, and in like a minute, they were having a beautiful conversation." He says, "I hope and pray that someday my daughter can do what your daughter can do." And now I hate this man so much. He's like held a mirror up to me to show me how ugly I really am. But at the same time, I sort of love him too, because he has managed to see my daughter through eyes that are better than mine. And what I don't know now, but I will find out 2 years from now, is that Clara has autism, that she gets diagnosed with autism. And suddenly, a lot of the things that I thought were annoying and frustrating and ridiculous make complete sense to me. People with autism, they're sort of all over the spectrum, and it affects people in different ways. For my daughter, when she looks at someone, she has no idea what to think about them. She cannot read body language. She can't read facial expressions. She can't read satire. She can't make inferences. But she wants to connect with people more than anyone I have ever met. And because she spent the first 10 years of her life in the company of my wife, who cannot stop talking to anyone in the world, she has taken on all of these strategies where she talks to everyone, even though she doesn't know what the hell they're thinking or what they're feeling or what they might be thinking about her. And for my daughter with autism, that means that every single sound in the world is all in her head at all times, so that she can hear the sounds of the ice machine and the bird tweeting and the person speaking and the car driving by, all at the same volume at all times in her head. And bright lights are terrible for her, which turns out to be nothing but Disneyland. And so you bring your autistic girl to Disneyland, and it is kind of a horror show for her, which is why she carries a brick around, it turns out. Because somewhere along the way, around the age of 6 or 7, she discovered that the way I can deal with all of this is to take a book and read it and retreat into fiction. And that is a strategy that she has found for herself that allows her to cope with this world. All of these things that I thought were weird and stupid and annoying as hell are still annoying as hell, but are now completely understandable to me. So when people ask me today, which they do, who is my hero, and I know they want me to answer a literary hero, my answer is always Clara. Thank you.
That was Matthew Dix. To learn more about him or to hear the other stories he's told on our podcast, visit our website, storyclatter.org. Our website is just one way to connect with Storyclatter, but there are so many other ways, and we hope you'll use them all. You can always follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Head to storyclatter.org to become a financial supporter, or if you want to come to one of our shows, start your own Storyclatter show in your community, or even learn how to tell your own science story, you can learn all about that on our website too. This podcast is produced by me, Misha Gajewski, along with Nikisha Roberts-Washington, Jen Chen, and Aaron Barker, Executive Director and co-founder of The Storyclatter. The stories featured in today's episode were produced by Paula Croxon, Latasha Wright, and Aaron Barker. Special thanks goes out to the Storyclatter's board and staff, including Anne-Marie Lonsdale, Leslie Bernson, and Lindsay Cooper. And next week, our stories are in honor of Disability Pride Month. I can't wait for you to hear these beautiful and powerful stories from people with disabilities in STEM. Until next time, thanks so much for listening.